Hey, what's up, guys? Gons here for the Face Like the Sun channel. Got a lot going on in terms of the world. Things happening every single day that touches on the stuff that we've been discussing and exposing and warning about on this channel for years now. So it's definitely hard to keep up. But thank you guys for supporting me, continue to support me in terms of prayers, in terms of encouragement, the shares, the likes, the comments even sometimes, although they're pretty critical. It's okay. I understand, everybody has a different perspective, a different view on things. I'm also currently still working on the Israel video that talks about financial technology. It might turn into like a blog post type thing too, just because it's so long and there's so much information in there. And I do discuss a lot of things biblically in terms of money and how, the Bible treats money and how we can look at that subject matter in the context of the modern financial technology revolution and pick out what might be good, what might be bad, what might be dangerous, and taking a look at all of those issues. And a lot of people, or some people, I guess, have mentioned like, hey, you can't just bash Jews. Okay, you guys know that I'm much more nuanced than that in my views. It's not just bashing Jews. It's it's being critical of certain individuals or certain actors, certain organizations that run the larger systems. And that's the same thing with the United States. Look, I'm an American. I'm a proud American, but I do have my suspicions and, of course, criticisms of probably some bad actors within all organizations in politics and government, and especially banks. And they're in bed together. Of course, we know about this. This is part of the problem of why politics is so ridiculous right now. It's all just money driven, and both from the corporate side or, now from individual investors and things of that nature. And that's just changing the landscape of politics in general. So, look, it all interconnects. It's not just one thing or one group of people doing it all. It all interconnects, and that's why the thing that I've been really harping on for a long time here is that the conspiracy is not necessarily just one of people in a dark room in the back, pulling all the levers, although something like that I do believe takes place more often than not to continue to push forward a greater conspiracy, which is a spiritual one. All right, so you know what? I was going to start with this Christian transhumanist thing, but because I brought up conspiracies, let me just touch on this other topic here that, everyone's been making fun of. BuzzFeed News, FBI said conspiracy theories like QAnon and Pizzagate are domestic terrorism threats. And I mean, the best part about this article is down here. It says the bulletin specifically, they found some bulletin. I'm not going to get into the news with this because it's stupid, but the bulletin specifically refers to QAnon, a baseless conspiracy theory that a shadowy network or shadow network is working against President Trump, and that an insider Q knows how it will be exposed. It's funny because they use the word baseless. And look, you can be a Q believer, you can be a Q skeptic, sorry. Either way, it doesn't matter. It's not baseless. It's not a baseless conspiracy. There's a lot to it, right? There's so much actually to it in terms of the information that's being shared by Q or, whatever. It doesn't matter if it doesn't matter if you believe it's true or not. I'm just saying in terms of using the word baseless conspiracy theory, we know that that's ridiculous. This is for people that are not willing to look into these issues on their own. But anyway, I wanted to drop that in there because it's pretty funny if you ask me. But, I wanted to start off with this Christian transhumanist poll. So the Christian transhumanists made a poll out here. Would you sign up for the first brain-computer interface, i.e. Neuralink, when they become available? 533 people voted over the span of 3 days. 86% of people said no. That's relieving, but 14% said yes. And actually, I think I did the math on that. Let's see, 533 times about 14%. That's about 74 people who said yes. They would sign up for the first BCI, brain-computer interface, like Neuralink. That's a lot. That's a lot for a poll that's supposedly under the Christian banner here. So interesting that that's happening. Hopefully, that's not widespread within the church. Although I don't know. I don't know what the poll is based on all the people, all the believers out there. I would like to hope and think that most people, most sensible Christians out there who identify as Christian, regardless of denomination or whatever, just people that believe Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior and that the Bible is the inspired word of God and all this kind of stuff. Those folks, I would imagine, aren't really down to start sewing silicon into their brains. And I posted this on Twitter here, responding to this guy, Samuel X, who commented in the last video, religious people are so delusional and ignorant. You're all hopeless. Please don't use Elon's inventions because you don't deserve them, and the rest of humanity wants you to go hide in the woods and continue your psychotic delusion. And I responded on Twitter, said, so we're the psychotic ones, not the folks who are willing to sew silicon into their brains. Yeah, all right, whatever, dude. And not to be outdone by Elon Musk and all the stuff he's doing, Facebook came out with this article, imagining a new interface, hands-free communication without saying a word. And they have the Facebook Reality Labs blog series where they talk about brain-computer interfacing and what it means for tomorrow's augmented AR glasses. Oh, sure, yeah, this is all for just augmented reality, sure. But basically, the idea here is that we can start to type and write text on a computer screen, not using our fingers or a keyboard or something like that, but just directly from the brain. Let's just skip and bypass this physical layer we have here because it's slow. Let's just go right to the source, the brain, to communicate. And look, that's been the goal for a while now. They want to talk about mind control and reading your mind and all this kind of stuff. This is next level. It says here, designing for the future, imagine a world where all the knowledge, fun, and utility of today's smartphones were instantly accessible and completely hands-free, where you can spend quality time with the people who matter most in your life. Oh yeah, wherever or whenever you want, no matter where in the world you happen to be. And where you can connect with others in a meaningful way, regardless of external distractions, geographical constraints, and even physical disabilities and limitations. This reminds me, again, anime was really on top of this, and we'll get to Japan in a moment here, but there was an anime, and I'm blanking on the name of the anime. Give me a second. I'm going to look it up. Yeah, Excel World. Let's see. Neurolinker. That's what it is. Here we go. Neurolinker is a collar-like personal computer that can communicate wirelessly with the user's brain. It has two functions, virtual reality and augmented reality. So sounds about right. And, there are scenes where a little boy character connects directly to this girl, I think. I don't know. I don't remember the storyline, but I remember just seeing some of the characters sitting down at a bar, or I think they were in a school maybe, and they connected their brains together, and everybody was kind of snickering and laughing at them because it represents this really intimate type of situation when you do a direct connection, brain to brain, not computer, but I guess computer interfacing, but not brain to machine, but brain to machine to machine to brain. In other words, this intimacy thing, this intimacy idea that's being alluded to by Facebook here. But yeah, that's kind of what they're trying to push here. You can spend quality time with whoever you want, just in the mind, in the cloud. Wow. That's the future we believe in, and one we think will be fully realized in the ultimate form factor of a pair of stylish augmented reality glasses. As Chief Scientist Michael Abrash and the team at Facebook Reality Labs see it, we're standing on the edge of the next wave in human-oriented computing, one in which the combined technologies of AR and VR converge and revolutionize how we interact with the world around us, as well as the ways in which we work, play, and connect. And it goes on here, and again, more information about brain-machine or brain-computer interfacing, and I'm sure you guys saw this stuff shared around. Now, they're trying to promote, responsibility and just, trying to take the necessary steps without being invasive or being detrimental to the overall cause here. But we know that this is all just, this is public now. If this is public now, who knows what's going on behind the scenes? And, there's no reason for us to trust that the people that are really tinkering with this technology haven't done some pretty disgusting things already. So that's kind of where we're at with Facebook. Remember, Facebook with the Libra thing, it's interesting to note that their whole thing has been Libra and the financial cryptocurrency markets and all this kind of stuff coming up with their own centralized coin. And again, it's not even really a cryptocurrency, it's just a virtual money that they want to control. But it's interesting that there we have the financial end of it, and here we have the brain computer connection to it. And you start to really think about how a mark of the beast economy can be created, and boom, here we are. I mean, this is right in our faces, like Facebook. And, this leads me again, the money and the brain connection, machine, everything technology. It's all one big thing. Financial times. Financial times. Why nanotechnology could be the key to smarter machines. I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but I'll read some highlights because I think this article written by Zenka Kuncic really just articulated very well some of the issues at hand and where they're at, where the physicists and these brain people are at, the neuroscientists. So she says, the brain has been described as the most complex structure in the universe and the most mysterious. We know more about our own galaxy sprawling for tens of thousands of light years, allegedly, than we do about the 1,200 cubic centimeters of gray matter within our skulls, which, let me stop there 1 second. If we don't even know what the heck the brain is doing, how are we so sure that, the galaxies are sprawling for tens of thousands of light years? I don't know the science behind all that. I'm not a scientist. So don't come at me with like that kind of argumentation or rebuttal. I'm just saying, just if we're going to logically apply what they're saying here, we don't even know how the brain works exactly in our skulls, yet we somehow know about all this other stuff that's so far away that we technically haven't reached. So anyway, let me keep going here. Though there are about half as many neurons in the brain as there are stars in the Milky Way, allegedly, its workings arise from the teeming connection between those 100 billion cells, a network whose staggering complexities we are only just starting to map. One of the most fascinating properties of the brain is what we call intelligence, the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills. We still don't know how the brain does this, how we remember things, how we learn, how we think. This is one reason the world has become fascinated by artificial intelligence. AI shows us that it's possible to emulate certain aspects of intelligence simply by feeding data into a computer and using relatively simple algorithms to find patterns that can then be used to make predictions, a process called machine learning. The most sophisticated AI algorithms use a machine learning approach called deep learning, with multiple layers of artificial neural networks, mathematical models loosely based on how real neurons are connected. New applications are emerging every day, from detecting disease to crafting pickup lines. Yet, AI is still no match for the human intellect when it comes to human things such as creativity and common sense. Even deep learning remains far from achieving the holy grail of artificial general intelligence, defined as learning and reasoning abilities across multiple domains, from medicine to politics, say, with broad autonomy. So-called neuromorphic computer architectures are designed to help curb AI's insatiable appetite for computer power, with chips that, like the brain, integrate memory and processing and are less power-hungry than conventional chips. Even so, AI struggles with meaning and text, and because its inner workings are hardwired and tailored to narrow tasks, it's also easily fooled by ambiguity and so-called black swan events, unforeseen developments with drastic consequences. Interesting that they used the black swan event as a problem with the standard AI model that we're using right now in computers, in terms of comparing it with a more intellectual machine, which is the brain. This is in stark contrast to the human brain, which has a seemingly unlimited capacity for learning all sorts of new things and for integrating and applying that knowledge in many different ways. The human brain continuously triages information, natural data, from its ever-changing, noisy, and unpredictable surroundings in real time without any assistance. What I'm interested in is determining whether it's possible to replicate this sort of intelligence. To do so requires reproducing a brain's neural network in a synthetic rather than artificial way. This is creating a physical object whose structure resembles that of the brain rather than software that mimics some of its functions. And she continues, as a physicist, I view the human brain as a complex physical system. It's a hardware device rather than an algorithm, and it doesn't need to be programmed. While it comprises lots of electrically responsive components in the form of junctions or synapses between neurons, it's not an electronic computer. It operates like a continuous analog mode rather than processing information using digital bits. What's more, this neural circuitry is interconnected with a vastly higher density and complexity than can ever be achieved in conventional electrical circuitry. Even neurons can talk to thousands of other neurons, which means there are hundreds of trillions of synaptic junctions. It is this complexity that gives rise to cognitive abilities. The inevitable conclusion is that intelligence is physical. Interesting. So, the understanding of how the brain works and the shortcomings of AI is giving insight into these people that, hey, it's got to be a physical thing, it's got to be an analog system. And it's so self defeating. It just completely takes away the metaphysical or spiritual realities that interface with the physical. She continues, the field I work in, synthetic intelligence, is not unlike a physical realization of Turing's original idea. I skipped through the whole Alan Turing thing because most of you guys are familiar with who he is and what he was talking about. My colleagues and I are developing a device with unconventional electrical circuitry in order to achieve a structural complexity and functionality similar to a real neural network. And then it, too, has many interconnected components that can rapidly communicate electrical signals, but instead of being biological, it is a product of nanotechnology, which harnesses the physical properties that arise at scales of a billionth of a meter. And then she says, our devices are like a computer chip, but with the conventional circuitry replaced with nanowiring that more closely resembles the brain's neural circuitry. Its design allows the nanowires to self-organize in a biologically inspired way, just as neurons and other cells naturally assemble themselves into a brain. Got a couple more here. I know it's a lot, but I think you guys are getting the gist of what they're saying here, what they're discovering, why they're moving forward with nanotechnology as a means to replicate the brain. And really what we're talking about here, this physical manifestation of these properties of consciousness. This is the traditional old golem. You know, we talked about it in Age of Deceit 2 and has been a theme coming up a lot here, the image of the beast. It's a golem. You know, that's kind of what they're trying to create. I continue on here. In a synthetic intelligence context, we're applying the same methods used by neuroscientists to analyze emergent collective dynamics from our nanowire networks. By stimulating our networks with different electrical inputs, we've found, for example, that they can lay down short-term and long-term memories essential for learning. It's just weird, you know, the concept of brain mind control stuff, the experiments that we know about, and electrotherapies that, you know, we talked about the Monarch machine. If you go back a few videos about trying to help the brain with electrical stimulation. And now they're using similar methods to see how this nanotech synthetic brain is coming together. And, you know, I'm not going to really get into the rest of this because it just talks about the difference between AI algorithms and the, you know, how a real brain, a cognitive machine, would function. And actually, let me get this here. Such cognitive machines could be used to in place of humans in high-risk endeavors, such as mining, security, and even space colonization, where decisions need to be made on the fly, in situ, based on the limited and changing information at hand. The technology could also offer a way to restore cognitive function in people suffering from neurological disorders. Yada, yada, yada. Back to Elon Musk. And oh, here we go. Neuroscience has revealed that functions such as pattern recognition and sentence pairing occur unconsciously in the brain. Since these are exactly what AI excels at, this implies that artificial consciousness is unlikely to arise from algorithmic artificial neural networks. So they're basically saying that this artificial consciousness can't come from just basic algorithmic AI or even AI neural networks. That's the conclusion that this lady physicist is coming to. And then she says this is the kicker here. That leaves open the possibility that consciousness could be an emergent collective property of physical synthetic neural networks. While we are in the speculative mode, we could also ask whether consciousness is necessary or is a necessary condition for ethical thought. Yes and no. I think ethics are just sort of, there's certain ethical things that are built into physical creation. And if you go to Romans 8, you see how creation is actually infected. It's waiting for the curse to be lifted. So anyway, it could, if we could conclude that it is, could synthetic intelligence one day be better than we are making ethical, or better than us, or better than we are at making ethical decisions, which would imply that ethical decisions, objective moral values, and duties exist outside the realm of a brain. Miss lady here, I mean, she's got a little contradiction thing going on there. If everything is physical, but you need this unphysical property, ethics, morals, laws, and duties, or not laws per se, but moral laws that bind our physical world to things that ought to be and things that ought not to be. It gets pretty philosophical and stuff, but in general, this is the problem with the material sciences right now. They're running into these issues where they can't really say, like, hey, I guess, that we can figure it out physically, and they can mirror biology as much as they can with physics or physical components now that we have the nanotechnology to do that. But the questions remain, is that really the same thing as the human brain that we have now? And at least for them. I think for us, for people that are looking at this from the biblical worldview, spiritually speaking, this is the golem. This is like the image of the beast. This is a perfect temple for the spirit of Antichrist to physically manifest in a body, in a humanoid, I guess, body. And I think that's something that we've discussed and speculated about in terms of biblical prophecy and the Antichrist, man of sin. Those discussions continue to take place, and I think should continue to take place within the church, because it's viable that sort of thing can take place given a synthetic body or synthetic humanoid brain that can, I guess they want to use it for mining and a few other things. Anyway, I think I've spent enough time on this article. You guys get it. Nanotech being used for smarter machines. And this is actually, let me just touch on this. This was in line with the Facebook article we started on about brain recognizing speech. UC San Francisco scientists recently showed that brain activity recorded as research participants spoke could be used to create remarkably realistic synthetic versions of that speech, suggesting hope that one day such brain recordings could be used to restore voices to people who have lost the ability to speak. Now, of course, giving people back the ability to speak through a machine, I suppose that's good because it allows them to communicate, and human connection is what really, humanity and the experience is all about. At the same time, we know about Revelation 13, again, the image of the beast. It's just an image, but it was given breath to speak. Yeah, I don't know. Just something to think about. But let me pivot here and shift over to chimeras, which has a connection here. They overlap, but this is more specific. This is away from the brain. And I just found this interesting. Have you guys ever heard of the Chimera Investment Corporation? Check out that logo. Got the lion and a goat on top of it. Yeah. Chimera Investment Corporation. Anybody have money with them? They have $4 billion in total capital, consisting of both common and preferred stock. And they've declared $4.6 billion common and preferred stock dividends. So not a small player. Big time. Billions of dollars. Chimera Investment Corporation, folks. And again, speaking of chimeras, a controversial human-monkey chimera has been created in China, according to a new report. This is Newsweek, so, take it for what you will. It says scientists in China have reportedly created a part human, part monkey chimera embryos for the first time. The team hope the technique will bring animals used to grow human organs for transplantation a step closer, Spain's El Pai newspaper reported. If successful, scientists could create chimeras which contain organs made of human cells. A chimera is an organism which contains two different sets of DNA. Of course, we know that. Then at the end here, such experiments are not condoned in the U.S., where the National Institute of Health has stopped short of a ban by blocking funding for chimera experiments. An NIH spokesperson recently told Science a proposal to rethink the block in 2016 is, quote, still under consideration. So here you go, researchers working on a human-monkey hybrid. Hey, again, we told you that you know Planet of the Apes was a documentary, a future documentary, I guess. Anyway, so there you go, more stuff here, and what I think we're going to start noticing is this distinction, but not a distinction, between the brain and the rest of the body. Okay. This is what's really creepy about what's taking place. The human body has really become kind of obsolete. It's deconstructed, by reverse engineering DNA and CRISPR and all this kind of stuff. The body part of it is already conquered in a sense, right? It's just the mind that they're going off after now. So, National Post, this is the story everyone's been sharing. Japanese researcher receives approval to experiment on human animal chimera embryos. If a chimera brain is found to consist of more than 30% of human cells, the researcher has promised to suspend the experiment. 30%, one third. So, if a chimera brain has more than 30%, they're being told to stop the experiment. Interesting. A Japanese scientist is one step closer to beginning unprecedented experiments that can develop human animal embryo hybrids. Hiromitsu Nakuachi, a professor at the Institute of Medical Science at the University of Tokyo and the Department of Genetics at Stanford University, has just received approval from a committee of scientists working for the Japanese government to insert human stem cells into rodents in an attempt to grow a human pancreas in the animal. The goal of the experiment is to get one step closer to developing human organs in animals that could eventually be transplanted back into humans. They got the quote here: "We don't expect to create human organs immediately, but this allows us to advance our research based upon the know-how we have gained up to this point. Though the decision allows unprecedented access to long-term chimeric organ experiments, some scientists were concerned with the ethics of the decision. The biggest worry for bioethicists in the industry is the possibility of developing a human-animal hybrid with human cells in the brain, which would present a huge ethical issue in terms of its cognition and awareness." Again, I think it's weird that they're really starting to target in on the brain as being the thing that makes us human, not the rest of our bodies. I just find it fascinating. Earlier this year, researchers at Yale University published a paper that proposed creating human monkey chimeras, creatures with entire sections of their brain derived from human cells, for research into cerebral conditions such as Alzheimer's. The kind of experimentation has already been underway in China, where scientists noticed eerie increases in the subject monkey's cognitive abilities. Oy, oy, oy. So we talked more about this in terms of the Japanese culture on the Canary Cry Conversations, which is an extra stuff you can get if you're a patron to Canary Cry Radio. And, we basically talked about how anime culture in Japan has really helped the progress of this kind of thing without much hesitation or without much, rejection from the people. They're probably just like, hey, we've seen it so much in all of our media, in our entertainment media. It's kind of like, yeah, of course it's going to happen. So, interesting that that's taking place. Now, I want to end this rant here with some scripture because it's good to touch on some of the passages in the Bible that aren't brought up much in church, probably skipped over. But, these chimeras and all this stuff, and even, the stuff of the mind we know has been part of the pursuit of the enemy for a long time. But the biological side of things, the effects that humanity can have when we start mixing with animals, I think there's evidence of that in the Bible. Obviously, Genesis 6 alludes to that with the Nephilim, but that was more the sons of God, or the B'nai Elohim, the rebellious watchers that mated with human women and created this race of giants. But other extra biblical text talks about how they were mixing animals and things like that. I'm sure this was part of the weirdness that was going on back then. But 1 Chronicles 20 verse 6, "And yet again there was war at Gath, where was a man of great stature, whose fingers and toes were 24, or 24, 6 on each hand, 6 on each foot, and he was also the son of the giant." And, I try to just land this on scripture, but I can't escape the fact that some of these things are happening in the world around us. Science News for Students, Body Functions, Brain section. "A sixth finger can prove extra handy. For one mother and son, it aided the ability to text, type, and more. Extra fingers are not that rare. About 1 or 2 in every 1,000 babies are born with extra digits. If the extras are just small numbs, they can be removed surgically at birth, but some extra fingers can prove helpful, the new study shows. Its results also highlights how flexible the human brain can be. That info can guide people who design brain-controlled robotic appendages. Oh, of course. Again, back to the brain. Now that we have these people born with a 6th finger, we can learn more about the brain and how it functions. The researchers studied the anatomy of the subject's hand with MRIs. They also looked at the activity in the parts of the brain that control the hands. Those scans revealed a dedicated brain system that controls the extra fingers. The 6th digit had their own muscle and tendons. That means they don't just piggyback on the muscles that move the other fingers, as some doctors had thought. The scientists described their finding June 3rd in Nature Communications. This is the key point here. The brain had no trouble directing the extra fingers, the researchers showed. To Burdett, that suggests someone's mind would be able to control robotic fingers or limbs. Such appendages would likely place similar demands on the brain, he says. However, it might be harder for a person not born with extra digits. So, that person with extra digits are going to have extra brain functions, in a sense, is what they're implying. And that can be, carried out into machines, or at least, multi-layered or multi-limbed machines that you can connect directly to the brain. And, they're trying to figure out how that might look with this incredible MRI of the 6th finger man. I mean, could this be Nephilim genetics? I don't know, but it certainly seems like it, especially if there's a dedicated part of the brain controlling that extra limb. There's something else going on here, but it also goes back to this notion of what was going on in the Old Testament here? What was happening at 1 Chronicles 20 verse 6, where it talks about these giants that were around that had 6 fingers on each hand and each foot. That discussion about, they were just, big guys or big people. It seems to break down. I think there was something else going on there. And, again, I've mentioned it before and I'll always mention it again, that those who occupied the promised land prior to the conquest were in fact enhanced in some way by rebellious watchers, maybe, or influenced by rebellious watchers. And I think that's the main theme here. I think that's what's going on. And that's why we have these genetic abominations back in the Old Testament of these giants and of these beings that come from the Nephilim. And there are other passages here that allude to that. Amos 2 verse 9, "Yet destroyed I the Amorites before them, whose height was like the height of the cedars, and he was strong as the oaks. Yet I destroyed his fruit from above, and his roots from beneath." It's interesting. God, the conquest language, a lot of what happens in the Old Testament has to do with getting rid of some of these abominations. I think there is something genetic going on there. There are speculations of that. I know that there's demonic activity, obviously, and worship of false gods and sacrificing to Molech and things like that. But in terms of during the conquest period, I'm definitely of the folks who believe that something genetically was going on here with the people who are described in the Bible as different from normal humans. They have different features. There's other passages where it talks about, some of their faces were like lions' faces. There's a lot. I'm sure you guys have gone over it. If you haven't, click around. There's lots of videos on it. I've done some videos on this topic, so it's out there. Deuteronomy 9, verse 2, "A people great and tall, the children of the Anakims, whom thou knowest, and of whom thou hast heard say, who can stand before the children of Anak?" And Anak directly connects to the Nephilim. So clearly this is something to do with that abomination that took place pre-flood, but also happened to stick around after the flood. And here Joshua 14:15, "And the name of Hebron before was Kirjath-arba, which Arba was a great man among the Anakims, and the land had rest from war." And this is Caleb's conquest of Hebron. And I think Caleb was one of the guys that really went in there and took care of business under the guidance of the angel of the Lord. But I really, this kind of information the church really, really needs to get a hold of as we start getting into the world of chimeras, okay? I mean, I can't really make much more of a case than hey, look, there is a biblical precedence to this thing happening with not just the brain, but the animals mixing with humans. And look, I know it's being presented as like, hey, it's to help people and grow organs to, save people's lives and things like that. I get it. I get that that's good in a sense. That's a good, wholesome thing to pursue. But when the tools that we use to get there are so rooted in the physical that we discard the spiritual aspect of it, I don't think it's really helpful. I think ultimately, for the sake of eternity, this is trying to reverse something that God has placed upon this world, this fallen curse. Really, God is the one that gave us the curse here of the fallen nature. It's because of our disobedience, of course, and we continue to perpetuate that disobedience in our daily lives. Everybody does. Every human being does, and that's why we need Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. That's the whole point. But those of us who see God's greater eschaton also understands that, hey, we're being changed. We're already changed. We're spiritually transformed, and we are waiting our new bodies, and that comes from God. This is His work, not ours. And so this type of thing, this is really playing God in a sense, and we've seen that. The esotericists and the elite, the pursuit of apotheosis, that kind of thing has always been there. Immortality has always been a pursuit. Why? Because it's our intended state. I think our intended God-created state is to be eternal creatures that enjoy the fruits of creation. But because of our disobedience, because of the disobedience of others in God's entire realm of creation, and that includes things we can't see, everybody's suffering the consequences, but He didn't leave us to die and rot. He sent His only begotten Son to be the sacrifice to restore everything. And that knowledge needs to continue to persist and enter into the minds of especially believers, but anybody who's willing to hear, because that truth is going to set us free. And I really just, that's what I'm passionate about. That's what I talk about. That's why I think these topics, more than just like, hey, it's happening, it's scary, ooh, more than that, it's like, hey, this is happening. Look at the solution of the gospel in light of this. It is remarkable. It actually applies way more than your standard sort of preaching of like, hey, love other people and stuff. And that's, of course, a part of it. But in terms of understanding the gospel message, this context of chimeras from the science lab and where that's headed, that to me is concrete evidence that the Gospels are true and that Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior. So, hope you guys get something out of this. Thank you guys for your ongoing support, prayers, comments, likes, shares, subscriptions, all that stuff. If you're a patron, thank you so much. You rock. I really do need to do a better job of trying to give exclusive content to patrons somehow. I've done a couple things, but maybe there's something that you guys want that you can share with me. Let me know. Also, if you guys want, please go to the Teespring store and pick up a t-shirt. More designs on the way, but that's just another way that I have available for anyone who wants to support this ministry. It is reaching people. I do get messages every day from people who have been affected by the videos. I've gotten a lot of emails recently of people who haven't said much over the years, but were compelled to message me because of something they saw out there. And, I'm trying to get back to everybody. It's hard to do, but again, thank you guys for your support. Can't do it without you. YouTube is not long for this world, and we all know that. But in the meantime, we're going to keep pushing stuff out there because I'm sure if it reaches one person, we always say that, right? If it reaches one person, changes their mind, gets them to follow Jesus, then it's all worth it. But it's really true. It really is true from the bottom of my heart. That's what I hope these types of videos do. It just brings light to these issues from a very grounded biblical perspective and the remarkable connections that seem to be in the scriptures relating to these events that are beginning to unfold in our world, in our lifetime. Are we privileged? I think so. I think even under the pretense of God, I think our generation is very, very privileged compared to many generations of believers that came before us. Pretty much all of them, maybe besides, the actual generation that saw Jesus. And maybe, the angel of the Lord walking around before that. So We live in unique times. We live in remarkable times. Keep watch. Stay sober minded. Have an awesome day, guys. God bless.